Hi, how's it going, everybody? It's your friend, Serena Slack. I suppose you must be wondering to yourself, Serena, what are you doing with that 5-gallon bucket? I'm going to tell you. So recently, it has come to my attention that I have been less than responsible with how to dispose of my paint water. I don't know why it didn't occur to me sooner, but probably not very good for the environment to be disposing of paint waste water by dumping it down the drain. Paint, both acrylic and watercolor, has pigment in it which can be toxic. There are certain metals and minerals in it that are probably not safe to put in our sewer system. Acrylic polymer is basically plastic, so it can clog your plumbing in your home after a long enough period of time. And because it's plastic, it's just not very friendly to our dear mother planet. So after a bit of research and deciding what method of paint water disposal I thought would work best for me, especially living in a tiny little apartment by myself, I discovered that I could get me one of these 5-gallon food grade safe buckets. You can get one of these at like any kind of hardware store. And the purpose of this is so that I can dispose of my paint water in here and then leave it open to the air so that the water will eventually evaporate out of it and leave all of the binders and pigment from my paints in the bottom to be wiped out later and thrown in the trash. I am slightly ashamed that I hadn't thought of this sooner, but I guess it's better late than never, because the last thing I want to do is to continue to pollute the only planet that I live on. So since we're here, I thought I'd show you what all of this is about and give you a bit more information on this in detail and just teach it to you the way that I was taught it. And if you need further resources, I will leave them in the description below. I have my spectacles on today. I don't normally wear them on camera. Okay, let's take a look at what we got here. So this currently is what I have to use. This jar right here is what I use to fill up with water and then rinse my paintbrushes as I'm painting, both for watercolor and acrylic. You can see it's quite old, very dirty. I do occasionally wipe it out with a paper towel just to keep the water as clean as possible, and then that I will throw in the trash. But up until this point, I had just been sort of like dumping it into the sink or down the toilet, and that is bad. So what I've decided to do instead is I purchased this 5-gallon bucket, as I said before, and I have a lid coming. The bucket arrived first, but I wanted to get started doing this, and the water that I had filling this jar, you can see the line right there. That was as high as the water went this time around. And I managed to fill only up to here in this giant ass bucket. So what I did first was I poured it through this funnel, which I also ordered online. And I also bought some of these giant cone coffee filters. This is a size 6 coffee filter, and I think that's the largest size they make. And what you can see if you look through this is when I poured the liquid from this jar into this bucket through this funnel with the cone filter in it, and you can very clearly see that inside this coffee filter is a whole bunch of pigment. This was just from watercolor, by the way. I didn't use any acrylic paint recently, and the pigments are so fine that they get trapped in the filter, and you can see that in the bottom it didn't even filter through. It's like not even dripping anymore, or if it is, it's doing it really slowly. So it really clogged the filter up. This is the kind of stuff that we don't want in our waterways. So what I did was I filtered most of it into the bucket. I left it here to drip dry. I'm just going to throw this filter away as soon as it's not quite so wet. And then I put a piece of cheesecloth that I had. I saw some other people online had used like a nylon stocking, and I just tied it to the top of the bucket until the lid arrives. I'm gonna like cut a hole in the lid. I'll probably do like half the lid open so that the water will evaporate through the cheesecloth, and then we will be left with sediment at the bottom. And then I might do a separate smaller hole just so that I can fit my cone filter funnel device thing that I've created so that I don't have to stand there and hold it the way I had to today. Then we're gonna pick up this bucket, and I'm just gonna store it back here behind my futon, right next to the heater. It gets really warm in this room, especially on sunny days, because my windows face south and I have my heater on in the wintertime, so I have a feeling that it won't take very long for my water to evaporate. And then I can just keep filling it as needed as I do paintings, and I'll feel just a little bit better about being more ecologically responsible. It's a funny story. When that bucket first arrived, right, it didn't come with a lid. And I was disappointed because I had ordered the bucket with the lid, and sellers can be kind of harebrained sometimes. So I went onto the home improvement store website and I ordered a lid. Well, the bucket did come with a lid and it arrived a few days late. So eventually I just resigned myself to the fact that I had ordered this extra lid, and because I wanted to cut a hole in the top of the first lid, I was like, oh good, that means I have two options for a lid and one can be more, airtight. That way if I have to like move it or anything, I'll be able to do so without there being any water spillage and I won't have to empty the bucket. Well, I just got a delivery notification on my phone that the new lid had arrived. And the box was huge, and I was like, get out of town, there can't be just a lid in there. And sure enough, there's a whole new ass bucket with a lid. This is what I ordered originally. And wait a minute, let me just clarify something so that you can see how absurd this is. This is the invoice from the home improvement store. You can see I ordered one 12.5-inch white plastic bucket lid. Just the lid. It was $1.88. Now I have an extra bucket. And I'm not complaining, because hey, free bucket. But I just imagine in my mind some disheveled hardware store employee who is like, what? Who orders just a lid? You're getting, like, the whole set. And that's the thing, I didn't need the new bucket, I just needed the lid. This is so silly. So now I got two buckets, and like, I don't even know what to do with this other bucket. All I know is that this has given me quite a hearty giggle for a Friday afternoon. I'm really happy that this has happened, even though I have no idea what to do with this extra bucket. Maybe I'll just do more paint water disposal and keep like switching them out so that, ooh, this could work to my advantage. So if for some reason the original bucket gets mostly full and I have to wait for the water to start evaporating, I can just use this one as like my backup and switch the lids. Although that's going to be rough because getting that lid on was really hard. I had to like smack it down with what did I use? I didn't use a hammer. Oh yeah, I used a rolling pin to like whack it on there because it was really hard to fit. They're really, like, they're snug. These are supposed to be food-safe containers, so, you don't want to get any sort of moisture or dust or anything in there if you're storing food for any reason. So, wow, 2 buckets. Oh, the sun just came out and shone itself upon me. Which reminds me, I have to show you the other bucket lid. Okay, so it's back here. Camera work's gonna be a tad tricky. And this is how I did it. So it was really difficult, actually. I used like a box cutter to cut half of this lid open, and then I just hot glued a strip of that cheesecloth inside, and then I cut a separate hole here so that I can stick the funnel, and that way I wouldn't have to hold it. And that's how I've been disposing of my paint water. You can see that this one's already been used, and there's my murky water. Hello in there. Jeez. Got this whole ass bucket. I still can't get over it. It's just too funny to me. Ugh. Shopping in 2021. That's so silly. Okay, so it is now the weekend. It's actually the end of the weekend. We are in Sunday afternoon currently, and I put off painting all week this week because I was waiting for my water disposal method to come to completion, and then by that point I just kind of like got sort of burnt out. Didn't really want to do any painting this week, which happens. But I am feeling no less creative, and I thought in the spirit of this video's sort of environmental PSA, I would create something made out of recycled materials because I have in my possession, this is a sketchbook that I bought a long time ago, and I bought it, it's a large sketchbook, and I normally don't use sketchbooks that are really big, but I want to start trying. The sketchbook that I have currently for practicing drawing is really small. This is the sketchbook that I've been using so far in 2021. I decorated the cover of it, but I mean, like, my hand stretches out farther than it is. It's so tiny. And this is great if I want to do like little drawings and stuff like that, and I've been using it quite a bit, but I have this big one and I want to start practicing things that are bigger. I really like the paper in here. This is going to be very good for sketching, and it's also acid-free paper. It's also wood-free, which is really cool, and that warms my environmentalist heart, but it also makes me wonder like what it's made out of. I'm so curious. But as you can see, the cover that this has is really frustrating because it's got like, it's one big long sheet of sort of cardstock that begins here, wraps all the way around to the back side, folds, and then wraps around, and I don't like the way it looks when you're opening it because it like shifts around and it gets really frustrating. So I thought I'd snip off the excess cover, and then I have some recycled board. This is dirty. I want to make sure that it's like smooth enough. There's like a few nicks in it, but that's pretty much it. But this is the back side of an empty thing of tracing paper, and I've just been saving it because I wanted to use this board. It's nice and solid, so I'm going to attempt to make a hardcover for this sketchbook, and we will see how that goes. Since my last video, I have procured a sort of extendable overhead. They called it a tripod, but it is neither tri nor pod. It's more of like an extendable arm, kind of like a boom arm, I guess you could call it. Woo! And it makes some funky, creaky spring noises, but it's very sturdy, and this is what we're going to be using today to film our overhead shots. Hello up there! So you should be seeing my workstation on the floor here. I'm always on the floor. Oh, if you're curious, this is the top of a pizza box that I was considering using for this project, but the cardboard in the pizza box is too puffy. It's not quite as compacted and hard as this piece of cardboard at the back of this tracing block. So my first step, of course, is going to be removing the actual cardboard from the pad. Now, I have bound books before. I'm very amateur at it, so this isn't something that I would necessarily try to pursue as a business, but, you know, the art process and the art journey is full of things that involve art for yourself as well as art for commodity and making that dollar. So I'm really not interested in doing that at the moment with this particular project. Now, I'm a little concerned that I'm not going to get accurate measurements, so I think my first step is going to have to be removing the excess part of this cover, and I want to try to get it as straight as possible, but I'm just gonna sort of trace a pencil line because I want to keep the black paper pages on either side because that's going to be the protective pages of this book. So I've got my fancy paper cutter. And now, oh, it's so good to be like unburdened of that weird clunky cover. It looks so much better. And you can see that like the spine is exposed, all of the signatures sewn together, and a cover will help protect that part too. But this is a pretty decent sketchbook actually, so there's no reason not to dress it up, right? So now we have to, I say we, but it's really me here. I like to pretend you're all with me. So I'm going to do my best to line up this book. So, oh wow, look, we only have that much left at the end. And then I'm going to do the spine using this strip here. There we go, that should do it. So now we have 3 pieces. One is the spine, and we've got 2 covers. I'm sure you can't see a gall darn thing from that far away and in this kind of lighting, but when I cut them out, it will be a lot more evident to all of you. Metal instruments! This will help me. Alright. 2 covers. Where's that book? This looks really good. Slap the other one on there. Alright. This is actually pretty decent. Alright. So we have 2 evenly sized covers now. Alright. Spine and 2 covers. So the dirty side is going to be on the inside because I want the outside to be as smooth as possible. So the next part of this is going to find something to dress the cover. I wonder if I have enough paper. I might also see if I have some fabric that I can use. That would be pretty cool if I could find a fabric that would work for this. Okay, so I'm going to set these aside, and I have unearthed a bag that is entirely filled. Oh, it's loud, sorry. This bag is entirely filled with scrap fabric. I used to buy these, like, I guess they're like quilting squares, I guess. I'm not really sure. 18 inches by 21 inches of cotton fabric is what these are. So I would buy these for various little sewing projects, and I don't do a great deal of sewing in my life. Maybe I should. Ooh, this one's cool, and it's like a little bit reinforced because it's got like this sort of shiny pattern on it. Ooh, there's all sorts of treasures in here. I had a penchant for like really loud fabrics. Wow, look at all of these. Ah, there's just like an embarrassment of wealth here. This one's so cool. Look how shiny it is. Ooh. Oh, and this one's like a little bit stiffer too. I'm sort of favoring the fabrics that have like some reinforcement on them because when you're binding books, you want something that can kind of like get between the glue and the board. This one's so pretty. It's just like the shine of the silver is so attractive. Let's see if we have enough. Oh, it doesn't look like it, does it? Oh no, we do! Oh, I could totally make something like this work. Yeah, plenty of space. The thing is, I'm not really sure what kind of glue I could use so that it wouldn't like interfere with the fabric itself. This might require some internet research, so bear with me a minute, I'm gonna do it. Okay friends, I did some research, and the internet is such a marvelous tool. I realized that I had to reinforce the back of that fabric with something, and I can use paper to do it. It was recommended by using either tissue paper or like a really thin kind of like printer paper, something that isn't grainy and is mostly smooth, and I have plenty of tissue paper. But to adhere that tissue paper to the back of the book, I need a wheat paste. So we are currently in my kitchen. Welcome, this is my kitchen. And I am going to go through the process now of making a wheat paste. This is kind of what happens when I create something or I have an idea for a project. It begins as something quite simple, and then it snowballs into me doing a whole lot of preparatory work. So this is giving you a pretty good idea of just what kind of madness you've stepped into on the Serena Slack Art YouTube channel. But I never let anything deter me, and it's fun to try new things. So I'm going to make this wheat paste, and I am going to gather my materials, and I will meet you back here in just a moment. To give you an idea of the materials I'm using, I have before me everything that I think I will need. The recommended way of cooking wheat paste is in a double boiler, but I don't have one of those. And I don't have any bowls that are like made of glass or metal that I can stick inside this little saucepan. So I'm just gonna be incredibly careful and keep my heat on my stove as low as possible. And if that means I have to be here for like an hour, then so be it. But I really just want to make something that will work. And I'm going to use the recommended recipe of, this is 150 milliliters of water, a teaspoon of flour in it. I have all-purpose flour, that's just what I have. And then it was also recommended that you can add certain things as preservatives so that it doesn't get all funky, because I will have to wait for it to cool off before I can use it. So I'm just going to use some clove bud essential oil in order to do that. I also have a strainer for when we eventually pour it into this wee jar, and they fit so perfectly together. I just turned my burner on low, and I'm just gonna add this water. And actually, let me turn it on medium. That way it'll heat up a little bit. My burner is smoking. There was probably something dripped on it. It smells pretty good. I wonder what I was cooking. Now, I was told a heaping teaspoon, but I wonder if I should just put like a tablespoon, because that seems like it would be around the same size anyway. Add that all in there. And then the instructions said to whisk and keep whisking. Now the good thing is that water and flour are pretty cheap materials and they're really easy to come by, so if I mess up I can try again. I just turned my heat down a tad. There's not a whole lot of water in there, so I want to make sure that I definitely don't burn it. I'm gonna pause while I stir this because I have a feeling I'm gonna be here for a while, but I'll update you as I go. It turns out that this isn't taking as long as I thought it would. I have to keep stirring while I film. Hold on. So check it out. This is actually thickening up really quickly. In fact, I kind of want to turn this down again, but if I just take this off the burner for a second and sort of tip it down, you can see that it is starting to get nice and thick. So this is working out pretty good so far. And I'm sure it's going to thicken up a little bit too after I turn the burner off and it continues to steam. Some of that water will evaporate out. You can see it's getting kind of gloopy. Now I'm not sure how thick this is actually supposed to be. I'm gonna keep it on there just a little bit longer. I don't want it to get like chunky or weird or anything. Alright, I'm gonna turn my burner off. I'm gonna keep stirring though, because the burner's still hot. Yeah, that looks pretty good actually. We'll see how this does. I want to keep stirring this up, but I also need to add some of this clove oil. It smells really good. I'm gonna add like, I don't know, 4 drops? 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go for 5. 5. Oh my god, it smells so Christmassy. No, I think that should do it. And then I'll move my camera back here, and then you can see me pour it into it. I'm just gonna use this strainer, which fits perfectly into this jar. I am just pouring it in there. No problemo. Yeah, this is really thick, so this worked out really well. I think this took me about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. The guy whose video I watched did it in a double boiler, and that took him about 20 minutes. So I think if you're just vigilant, you can make this material quickly on the stovetop without having to use a double boiler. But I definitely don't claim to be an expert. I'm just showing you what I'm doing, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, oh well. I'm gonna leave this open to the air to cool it. This is most certainly going to be enough for the project that I'm doing. So here it is. It's warm still to the touch. It's cooling though, and it is mighty jiggly. And then once this completely cools, I think that's when I'll start using it for my bookbinding project. But I have some other prep work to do, so let's do that now. Back to the floor now. I pulled out my little iron. It's such a shorty, and it's perfect for like sitting on the floor. And I have to press this piece of fabric because there are too many creases in it. I have pulled out my iron and this fabric pile for the second time in a month, which is wild for me. This has been sort of sitting and gathering dust in a cabinet for multiple years, and suddenly I've found 2 projects to work on that involve using these sort of fabric pieces that I bought. It's nice to use up materials in my stock that I thought I may never use again, because like these are just things that I just don't think to do until I'm inspired to do them. This is the reason why I don't throw anything away either, which is, you know, bad, because they don't always come to fruition as like an art project that I finish. The other project that I used with this pile of fabric was I made my own pencil case, which is really cool. I'll give you a tour of this at some point, but isn't it pretty? It's purple. I love purple things. Okay, I think this is going to work. I'm very excited. But the next part of the process is going to be cleaning up my workspace, because I have a lot of floor that I have to use up. I don't have a work table. I always spend my life on the floor because it's where I'm the most comfortable, honestly. But I just don't have a lot of furniture. This apartment is pretty tiny, so I just make do with what I have, and this is going to require as much surface of my floor as humanly possible. So pardon me, I'm going to clean up, and we will reconvene for the next part. Okay, so I'm back now. What I'm doing now is I'm really just sort of trimming this piece of fabric down a little bit so that it's not quite so big, doesn't take up quite as much space. And then we are going to just sort of leave that there for the time being. Okay, so I have here a piece of tissue paper. Trying to smooth it out as much as possible, and then I'm gonna probably trim it up. I want to make sure that it is slightly larger than this piece of fabric that I have. As for the fabric, it was sort of recommended to spray your fabric down a little bit just to give it some weight and to get it to sort of stick to your table surface a little bit better so it doesn't move. The last thing you want it to do is sort of shift around. Okay, we have our starch paste that we made earlier. Just gonna pop it open. We are like fully saturated. Let me just go over it a little bit around the edges just in case. All right, so here's the tricky part, and I really hope I do this properly. You have to lift your paper gently, 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 and then, oh God, I'm not ready. I gotta get this crap out of the way. Okay, so the instructions were to just drape it. This brush is dry. We are just smoothing out the paper from the inside out onto this fabric. I'm going to transfer this to a different part of the house. And I still have paste left over, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to move this, I think, to maybe the kitchen floor. This is definitely tricky, and I definitely should have done something a little bit more non-stick. I'll see you in a few minutes. Bye! Welcome back. I have returned from the kitchen. I think this is dry enough now that I can iron it. There's a little bit of moisture left, but I want to use that to my advantage to iron out the cloth, because as you can see, as it's dried, it has curled considerably on the edges. the next part is going to be about adhering our book cover boards to this fabric. Okay, so 1/4 of an inch looks like it's about the most accurate and will give me enough space. So let's move this aside, and I'm actually going to move these aside as well. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry and we will determine how successful we have been with this project, because the moment of truth will arrive where we can actually put the sketchbook inside of the cover. And I'm nervous because I can't say my measurements were 100% accurate, but I did my best, and I definitely did a lot of research on this before I dove right in, so hopefully I've made something that is sturdy and will last a long time. I will see you in a bit. Okay, so this is pretty flat and it's definitely dry. I couldn't pull this off even if I wanted to. The next step is going to be folding it up and gluing it to the actual cover. Okay, so let's do a final reveal of our project. I've positioned it horizontally with all of these books on top of it. Nice and heavy so that it will dry flat. And here we go. Let's see how we did. The cover looks smooth. That's nice. Let's check the other side. Yeah, it didn't turn out too bad on the exterior. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can get the whole thing in shot. There we go. Now, the good thing about this is that it doesn't matter which way the front cover is. I guess that's to be determined depending on which I turn into my front page. I could turn it this way. I could turn it this way. Oh, okay. So, I mean, like, the cardstock that was on the inside cover of these was pretty thick, so, like, even though I can tell that the application of glue isn't the super smoothest, it still turned out really good, and I think it's gonna hold up well. Oh, I see that this kind of made it to the edge over here, so I think maybe the cover could have used to be a little bit bigger, but it still looks pretty good. Got some schmutz on it already. Oops. So let's see how the inside back cover looks. Oh, okay. This one isn't quite as close to the edge as the other side. Not bad at all. And it closes. Now, I don't believe that the glue on the spine is fully dry yet, so I am actually going to keep this here under all of these books so that it continues to dry and the glue on the spine continues to harden. And then I'm pretty sure by tomorrow this will be a working sketchbook, and then I'll be able to draw in it. That's really exciting. Oh, My hair is a mess. I'm all disheveled. This has been quite an interesting project today. I had a lot of fun doing it. It was definitely off the beaten path for what I usually do. And since it's my third video on YouTube, I think that it's kind of like establishing me as like being a multimedia artist, I guess. I don't know. You guys would have to tell me. But that's very normal for me sort of in my real life. I will do a series of samey projects where I'm just doing nothing but painting, and then occasionally I'll throw myself a curveball with a different kind of project that I need to do, and this is a very good example of that. And it was nice to use up some odd materials that I've had collected, sort of stowed away in cupboards for a really long time, and it made me feel good that I didn't have to buy anything and that I was technically recycling things, so that's also nice. I'm going to sign off now. I hope that the beginning part of this video was informative and interesting for you and amusing, because I was certainly amused. My environmental PSA. I definitely hope that for those of you who are painters like me and who also wish to be more environmentally conscious, that it's given you something to think about and maybe, you know, a new method that you can incorporate into your art practice. I had fun. This has been a hoot. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. We can resume painting next week. Until then, ciao everybody.